How do you see the current level of technology maturity of the pharmaceutical industry?
Healthcare delivery as such, which is about patient care and management of how the healthcare services are provided, it has transformed over the last decade or so. But as you mentioned, pandemic has really accelerated that transformation journey in the last couple of years. um, the leveraging of technologies like remote connectivity, virtual sessions, telemedicine, and also going into the likes of IoT driven care, and also now looking at data driven technologies to get more insights of how to improve the delivery using artificial intelligence and the like, has actually improved significantly. Now, pharma companies as such is part of that healthcare ecosystem, right? We need to look beyond the traditional ways of manufacturing drugs and supplying them, but also to embrace technology in terms of how do we engage with the healthcare providers, whether it is doctors or other players in the ecosystem. We need to make sure that that is being done. So basically, when patients and also the doctors are now getting into a different way of getting the care that they need and the care that is to be delivered to them, we also need to make sure that we are making sure that we are part of that ecosystem in a appropriate manner. So technologies like cloud, which was traditionally in a pharma sort of environment, had a very slow start. That is becoming more and more adopted for different reasons. Of course, there is choices made on what should sit in on-prem, what should go to cloud, what could be in a cloud on-prem kind of setup, which are some of the facilities some providers are providing. All those kind of technology choices are being made. And then the architecture of the organization also is changing, which is going to be driven more and more by the data. So that's one thing. Second thing is that the care delivery, where it is probably about even administering the drugs that we manufacture, needs to be a little bit more better governed for consumption by the patients. And that's where IoT type of technologies is emerging, and a lot of companies are getting into this. I mean, we also have something in the respiratory area, and engagement with the patients in that kind of scenario also becomes very important, and you need digital mechanisms for that engagement. Internally, then if you look in the organization also, there are other technologies which is being leveraged, like AR and VR, for example, in terms of doing the work on the lines, how we can make it faster, better, etc. And even in areas like training, because a lot of people are working remotely. Not everybody is there in the same room or the building anymore. So how do we make sure that these kind of trainings are delivered virtually in a very effective manner, and not just a one-way traffic kind of training, right? So essentially a lot of things are changing, and a lot of interesting work happening right across the value chain of the organization.
How is Lupin adopting new technologies to further increase its competence in the market?
You might already know about the Anya chatbot that we have, which was launched even before the pandemic, and it has evolved through the pandemic as well. So basically, this is a chatbot which is like Ask Anya Bot, which you can find in Facebook Messenger. And I think we have introduced that in multiple languages, Indian languages, where whoever is seeking information. Currently, it is focused around respiratory ailments like COPD, asthma, etc. They can go and get the information, verified information through this chatbot, and we are looking to make that available through other platforms as well, not just Messenger. So we already have some kind of headway into leveraging that kind of technology as an organization already before the pandemic. Now, what has happened over the last couple of years is we have set our journey towards significant digital transformation, where the advanced analytics plays a big role in the different use cases that we are looking at. Predominantly, we are looking at in manufacturing and quality area, because that is where in a lot of focus as a pharma company is traditionally as well. And we are also looking at other technologies like which I already mentioned, like the augmented reality, gamification oriented training programs, um, digital twins for different processes in manufacturing quality and even packing area. So a lot of these things are being done. We're also looking at non-core activities like utility, for example, utility cost, because in our API plans, that is a significant cost component. So there are different areas that we are looking at, and Lupin, I think, is positioned very, very nicely in this area, and we already have a head start.
What are the most critical considerations for pharma companies during digital transformation?
For pharma sector on that is we have to look beyond the drug innovation and the manufacturing. We need to leverage the digital revolution that is going on by really evaluating and prioritizing the high impact areas that these kind of technology initiatives can bring for the organization across the value chain of R&D, production and supply. And different pharma companies might have different challenges, but there might be some common areas as well. Yeah, and the common areas might be in the manufacturing and quality area, where you look at how do you improve the throughput, how do you improve the yield, how do you reduce losses, how do you get into preventive maintenance, how do you reduce the costs, core cost as well as non-core cost. All those areas you need to look at and see how do you where to focus on and how do you approach that. And then organizationally there has to be a top-down strategy and approach. And also that needs to be supported by a bottom-up evaluation process, which I just mentioned, and then thereby coming out with focus areas for your organization. Another big challenge in this times is the capability and the mindset. These are new things. A lot of the people who are in the traditional organizations do not have some of these new digital and data oriented capabilities. Now, how do you develop that? How do you source that where that is needed? Most companies are trying to do something or the other in this space, and hence there is a huge competition for these kind of resources. So it has to be a combination of sourcing versus development. And enough focus has to be put in that space. And the other thing is mindset, because this is a big journey, long journey. In many cases there might be some low hanging fruits, but results will not come overnight. Results will take time, and hence that mindset of going through that transformation and then focusing on the outcomes that needs to come from those initiatives, without losing sight of where you're trying to go and not just looking at what is the results coming today or tomorrow.
What steps should be taken for an effective convergence of IT and OT layers?
Was kind of standalone in its space. With increased digitalization and the leverage of data that comes out of that is gaining more and more importance. It is important that the OT network is also taken seriously in terms of making sure the security is taken care of, and the data integrity and data convergence is taken care of as well. So as I said, in the front end there's a lot of things happening um, around different sorts of technology, IoT and everything else that we just talked. So that kind of backward compatibility and is needed till the OT environment. And if you're not able to manage that in an integrated manner without compromising the security, then that becomes an issue. So here, what I would call out is also the OEM companies that provide the machines for the OT environment. They also have a role in this. Traditionally, the approach that I've seen in many cases is that they are not very proactive in addressing this kind of concerns. But I think that time has come. They need to take it very seriously on how they're going to manage the embedded systems in these machines, how are they going to manage the operating systems associated with that, how are they going to manage the upgrades that is needed as because the technology evolvement is very, very fast. So they need to be hand in hand partners in this journey. And internally we need to make sure that the data exchange is set up through a secure architecture, and make sure that the lag that might have been there between the OT data coming into the consolidated platforms is taken out as much as possible, and data is normalized so that we can make sense out of that data, so that it is not just a dashboarding of information, but actually being able to interpret the data wherever needed as real time as possible, and be able to take action.
How should the pharma companies address the challenge of cybersecurity?
When I talk about non-pharma industry from a consumer point of view also, there is a need to sort of create the trust, and give that confidence, that their data or their orders or their products are being managed in a secure manner. Things like, in our area, for example, clinical trials, right? So that's a significant area where patients are working with us to facilitate some of the trials. So that, combined with the fact that over the pandemic period, where the cybercrime has gone up significantly, there has to be absolute clarity that organization has to become a security first approach, which needs a lot of technologies to be put in place on the first place, so that there's a continuous monitoring, and management of the risks that we are seeing there, and the threats that we are faced with, and there are tools out there which are quite agile in the way, in terms of adapting to the changing world out there. It is a cat and mouse game, but we need to stay ahead of that game as much as possible. So the foundation of this is data integrity, right? This just cannot be compromised. It is the backbone of everything that we do from a compliance point of view, especially now that we have become more of a digital economy, yeah, across the world. So this is the non-compromisable fact, which is a foundation. That, combined with the digitalization that is going on, as I said, that trust building and confidence building is absolutely critical. Now, once you have that systems and the tools that is put in place, then there has to be a integrated operations management layer on top of that. How do you pick up the signals? How do you pick up the alerts? How do you stay ahead and make sure some of the proactive detection that has been done by other providers is implemented in terms of the threat management in our area? And creating and correlating that across other activities that is happening in your organization or in your ecosystem, even externally. So that kind of orchestration mechanism and operations management is also absolutely critical.
How do you envision the future of the pharma segment in terms of new technology adoption?
See, from a technology adoption point of view, which you asked, more and more cloud oriented services and technologies will be adopted, because you are engaging outside the organization as well, right? In that kind of a situation, you need to have secure ways of making sure that accessibility and providing that information or the delivery of the care or whatever it is taken care of, and cloud is the app technology to be used in that kind of space. The second thing is that it is not going to be a traditional approach where you have the likes of ERP and everything revolves around that. That is important, that is still the core, but the overall architecture of the organization will be driven by data. What data is where, how do we make sense out of it, how do we leverage it, and hence the different components of the enterprise architecture we need to put alongside the ERP and similar systems, data also at the core. So that's the second part of it. And the data might be different for different areas of the organization, different markets. So strategies need to be put in place on how do you deal with that. And then automation, using the likes of RPA, for example, or intelligent automation solutions, and workflow based control, and all those things are going to be significantly helping. And last but not least, I would say the digital technologies, like the data and the digital technologies, which companies are already in a journey on, where it is about leveraging the likes of artificial intelligence, using different technologies of digital twins, or AR VR based technologies, and also machine learning based algorithms, which is needed for advanced analytics. So those are the areas where from a technology point of view, this sector will see a lot more adoption, and I'm sure most of the organization are in this journey.